Well, it is often this time of year when getting a little tired of winter that my husband and I begin thinking about how nice it would be to be on the river. As many of you know, we both enjoy fly fishing. And one of the things we love about it is that the wild trout, which is the fish that we pursue, live in gorgeous, pristine waters. So you're going to some really very nice places. A favorite place for us is up in Michigan on the Asabo River. It's pretty remote, and when the canoers aren't sort of tearing through there, it is so quiet, and you can sort of stand there and feel like you're the only person on earth. And I mean, you see eagles and herons and kingfishers and otter and mink and muskrat. I mean, they're all there until the next canoer comes. Then they're all gone, but they come back. It's wonderful. It's amazing. And there are moments, it feels like a little bit of the Garden of Eden. Well, of course, catching the elusive trout is sort of what we're there trying to do. And happily for me, my husband is pretty good at knowing all about these things. He's the one who assembles the dry flies so we can match the hatch, as they say. He loads and totes our waders and vests and rods and all the stuff, the tippets and the cutters and the lotions and the potions. I mean, it is really, seriously, it is quite an operation. You have to have the right equipment, but it is really more than that. It requires a lot of knowledge and an awareness of one's surrounding. I mean, you literally have to know what's going on all the time. The temperature of the air and the water is absolutely critical. Matching the hatch means knowing just exactly the pattern and the size and how it's tied and where it's cast. And this is all very important. In short, it takes a lot of expertise to do it, and I'm very aware that when I am doing it, I have the advantage of traveling with someone who knows what he's doing. And this explains why on the rare occasion when I actually do catch more fish than he does, he's so pleased for me, but you can tell he's a little annoyed. It's a long way from the Asabo River to the Sea of Galilee, and a very, very different sort of fishing that Peter and James and John and Andrew, they were engaged in. But catching fish anywhere requires a certain sort of skill set. And I just want to say, isn't it interesting that the first 4 disciples Jesus chooses were, fishermen, just saying. In today's gospel, Jesus begins his ministry by calling these men to reimagine their lives. The Bible says Peter and Andrew were in the midst of casting their nets, and James and John were mending theirs when Jesus simply called them and said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of people." And we might think, well, how is this possible that these 4 men, right in the middle of their daily task, would just drop everything and follow him? It's as if Jesus sort of makes one cast and scoops all 4 of them off their feet. Note that the Bible doesn't say that these 4 fishermen were looking for another line of work, that they were waiting for Jesus to come by, or doing anything other than trying to get a decent catch so they could pay their bills. It's important for us to remember this, that these first disciples who were caught up were not seeking anything. They were being sought by Jesus. Fish don't line up to be caught either. They are pursued. This, I think, is Matthew's point. Jesus came to them. The Bible teaches us this is the way of God. Sometimes we get the idea that we should be knocking or asking or saying special prayers or making certain decisions to let God do this and that. But actually, the Bible tells us over and over that God is the one who seeks. Our God is an actively seeking, relentlessly searching God. And if you don't like the fishing analogy, well, we've got others. God is like the shepherd who goes to great lengths to recover the lost sheep. God is like that woman who rips her house apart looking for that lost coin. God, like the father who stands by the window waiting for the return of the prodigal son. We sort of marvel that the fishermen answered the call. But another way to think about it is, why in the world did Jesus pick them in the first place? Because let's face it, we know how this story unfolds, and they begin to follow Jesus. And isn't it the case that they hardly distinguished themselves? They frequently were missing the point and heading off in their own direction, and yet Jesus calls them, entrusts them, wants them to join his fishing business. Right off the bat, Jesus makes it clear when he recruits his first followers that he's not going to be a lone ranger in this people-catching business. He says, I need help. The call of Jesus is the commission. He tells those fishermen, in effect, I have found you for the purpose of joining me to find them all. I will make you fishers of people. Well, of course, this is how this has become our job, our mission, our purpose. It's not just Peter and Andrew and James and John who have been called to be fishermen. It's us too. So the question for us is, how's that fishing going with Jesus? Or did you not know that we who have been claimed in the waters of baptism, scooped up into the net of God's love, we have also been called to go fishing with Jesus? I know how it goes, although I was very encouraged today to hear you all belting out, particularly that first hymn. You loved singing that hymn. I love to tell the story. I was looking around, I thought, it's our new evangelism committee. What a wide field to draw upon. Oh, I know better than that. Yes. There's a lot of nervous giggles going on out there. But do remember, Jesus isn't looking for this sort of amazing set of skills, obviously. He called some very ordinary people, yes, in the midst of their daily tasks. And he didn't send them to seminary either, you might note. What he did was make a promise that he would fish with them, because this is God's desire, God's plan. But so how does it happen practically? How are we caught up? How do we join with Jesus to catch others? People will sometimes say that when they were children, they were dragged to church. And that's often used as an excuse for why not, shouldn't go today because you had to go then. On the other hand, I'm willing to bet that a lot of us, show of hands quickly, were dragged to church as children. Yeah. Oh, sure. Again, not everyone, but, here we are. Is it hard to imagine that maybe God uses parents in this way? That it is a way to be fishing with Jesus? It's something to keep in mind if you are at the stage in life when you are bringing children, particularly when they're older and more sort of unhappy about it, that possibly there is a chance that Jesus promises to fish with you for your child. Others, as I've said, they're not sure they have the right gifts to fish with Jesus. I understand this entirely. Don't know enough about Christianity, don't know enough about the Bible. And then we might stop and think, you know what, though? People who don't come to church are not here because you are not a biblical scholar or a theologian. Do you want to know the number one reason? The number one reason people don't go to church, they give for not coming to church? Number one reason, no one ever asked me. And you have to think, how much skill does it take to say, will you come to church with me? When Peter and Andrew and James and John stepped out of their boat, it was an act of faith. They left their old lives behind. They heard the call of Jesus and simply believed that he must know what he's talking about. It's the same for us. The first thing for us is to realize that we have been sought, that we have been caught by the love of God, because we have. It's why we're here. And if someone had to drag you here today, then just consider you are in the process of being caught. But the second thing is really important. The second thing is taking Jesus at his word that having been fished from the waters, he promises to fish with us. Now, do skills matter at all? Well, sure. And naturally, I'd draw upon my fishing experience here at this point. I don't think it was happenstance that the first disciples were fishermen. But I do know, at any rate, the fishermen have one sort of good trait, which is an amazing amount of patience. Fish are not sort of lining up waiting to be caught. You really do have to pursue them normally. And you have to expect resistance, because fish and people are like that, aren't they? Another good virtue people who fish have is a passion for doing it, because otherwise it's just way too hard. Fishing for people requires a passion, caring deeply, loving these people that God intends to reel in. And there are other things too. Fishing involves, as I said, paying attention, reading the water, attending to a host of small details, and that's pretty much what we do here if you think about it. I mean, when we're really on our game, we pay attention to our visitors, we try to anticipate their needs, we attend to small details like a cup of coffee and a bulletin. Often is what's needed is simply a matter of doing what we already know how to do with a little burst of creativity mixed in there, and then we're fishing with Jesus. For years and years, we have sponsored families at Christmas time, as you all know, given them gifts and food and so forth. And then suddenly we got this ding. We could put a little information about our church and invite these people to come and worship with us. Gosh, what an idea. I'm not sure why we took a while to get that one. And then Marcy and Dave came up with a very good idea. And they said, let me take those lists of families that, had children in them from the Christmas Family Project, and we'll make up Easter baskets, and we'll tuck a little invitation into Vacation Bible School in those, and we'll deliver them to them. Ding! And then Heather came up with a good idea. She said, that Easter egg hunt that you do around here on Easter itself, why don't we move that earlier a week and make it a community Easter egg hunt and invite all these families here and give them information about our church. Ding, ding, ding. Good stuff. But we all say, in truth, many of our efforts are probably like fishing from the bank, right? What we hope to learn this year is how to begin to get our feet a little more wet. I say this because evangelism is going to be a focus for us this year. You're going to hear a lot more about it in the coming months. In preparation, Pastor Craig has been entertaining himself by poring over a stack of documents like this. I am not exaggerating. Census data. He's been going at this with the intensity that a dry fly fisherman would look at the life of aquatic insects. Just study. You know that both would have serious fishing on their minds. And our whole program will be to try to become a more inviting congregation, both in the sense of actually inviting other people and being a more inviting place to be. And speaking of Pastor Craig, now that the cat's out of the bag, I wanted to say a word I didn't say in the first service. And basically, isn't this just an absolutely wonderful day for this anniversary celebration? Perfect. I think our lessons are working so well for us today. It's just amazing that, that we can be here and do that. 25 years is an acceptable, good length of time. I'm not going to talk about age, and I'm not going to talk about myself. He's told you in the past, of course, that he hates fishing, basically. Fishing in the sense of, for fish with fins and scales sort of thing. And this is actually very understandable because, of course, patience is maybe not one of his virtues. Just saying. And he also gets seasick on a boat. So, it's the seasickness, and we're not going to explore that one either. But more importantly, he does have such a seriously genuine, passionate love for God's people. And that is what he brings to this place. And that's why we're celebrating this call that he received from Jesus, and how Craig has, throughout these years, willingly used his gifts, his tremendous energy, his creativity, his intelligence, and his love for the people in this congregation and beyond. And we have, of course, special guests. Shirley Fourman, Craig's mother, is here, and other family members. And Shirley could testify to the fact that, yes, indeed, she and her husband drug Craig to church. Couldn't be there too often. Absolutely. Right. Our former bishop of the Southern Ohio Synod, Cal Holloway, is here today, and our current bishop hopes to join us in lunch. She's engaged this morning at another church, but she's coming. And we have Larry Donner, who many of you remember was here and helping us out a few years ago when I was on sabbatical. Joyce. So we're going to have special guests down there, and again, another reason, just the draw. And the people come here because these special guests to remind us not only in the interest in the wider church in the life of abiding Christ, but also to honor the work that is done through this congregation, especially under Pastor Craig's leadership, that impacts the church beyond this particular congregation. So again, everyone, you're invited to come down. But for today, finally, I want you to think about how you got here, how Jesus came to you, who in your life did that little pull on the net, and I want you to consider that you too have been called by name and invited, called, to put your hand to the net. The call of Jesus isn't only for pastors. I want you to think about the things you already do and imagine how marvelously well Jesus could use you. For make no mistake about it, God does intend to use you, because it is God's desire to reel them all in. Thanks be to God. Amen.